It was just after 3 in the morning when the phone rang. I hadn't heard from my mother in almost a year, not on my birthday, not on Christmas, and certainly not on days when I could have used a voice that still sounded like home. I sat alone in my small apartment in Austin, my tea now cold, an open book on my lap I'd stopped reading 30 minutes before. The lamp cast a soft circle of light on the hardwood floor, and outside, the city hummed quietly. But when I saw her name flash across my phone, Loretta Calhoun, all caps like always, my stomach turned. "Your sister is dying," she said. Just like that. No greeting, no pause. "We need your kidney." I didn't answer right away. I was still stuck on "your sister is dying." Not Delaney, not your older sister, just your sister. Like she'd become a title, a job, a cross to carry. "I didn't even know she was sick," I said. "Well," she replied, her voice clipped, "she didn't want to worry you. She wanted to protect you." That line, I'd heard it before, wrapped around every lie this family ever told. Then came the real reason she called. "We've already spoken to the hospital. They say you might be a match. You're healthy. You don't have kids to think about." My tea, now forgotten, trembled in my hand. "You make it sound like I'm some spare part," I said. My mother exhaled, long and sharp. "It's your turn to show what family means." There it was, not a request, a command. Delaney, the golden child, the girl who was always front and center, never once helped anyone without a camera or a crowd. She never stayed late when Dad had his surgery, never visited Grandma when her memory started to go. But now that her kidneys were failing, I was suddenly part of the family again. "She never called to check if I was alive," I said, mostly to myself. "But she calls to ask for a piece of me?" "You're being dramatic," Mom snapped. I didn't answer. "You're selfish," she said, this time with no emotion, like it was just a fact. "She would have done it for you." "No, she wouldn't have." "I need time," I told her. "To think." "There's nothing to think about," she said. I hung up. My hand trembled for a while after that. Not from fear, from fury, and the shame that came from knowing this wasn't the first time they'd tried to guilt me into giving more than I had. The thing about guilt is, it has roots, deep ones, and mine started early. I remember the first time I was called ungrateful. I had just gotten into college out of state, full scholarship. Mom said, "So you think you're better than us now?" Then came the years of being overlooked, of hearing Delaney praised for keeping us together, while I was told I was too quiet, too cold, too independent. At her wedding, I was the one who steamed her dress, arranged the flowers, drove the out-of-town guests from the airport. I wasn't in a single photo. At my graduation, no one came. "They don't remember me," I whispered, "unless they need something." I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone screen still glowing. A new message. "We've booked your ticket." I didn't say yes, but they already decided. That's how it always worked in this family. You don't speak up. You don't make noise. You just give in. Quietly. I got up, went to the closet, reached for the old box on the top shelf, the one labeled in permanent marker, Elgin, stuff I left behind. The air felt different the moment I stepped out of the cab. I hadn't seen the old driveway in years, but the cracks in the concrete were still there, just like I remembered. Nothing had changed, not the color of the shutters, not the fake welcome mat Loretta insisted on keeping. But I wasn't the same. I could feel that. She greeted me at the door like a neighbor she barely remembered, her smile tight, her arms out, but only enough to graze my shoulders. "We're having a family dinner tonight," she said, before I could even take off my coat. "Everyone's coming." That was her way of saying, "Prepare yourself." This isn't just a visit. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and expectation. I dropped my suitcase by the stairs, didn't bother unpacking. Whatever tonight was going to be, I already knew it wasn't about family. Hours later, the dining room table was dressed like it was Christmas. Long white tablecloth, wine glasses no one ever used, candles like we were pretending this was elegant. Not a single thing on that table had my name in it, not in the settings, not in the food, not in the energy. Delaney made her entrance last, like always, wheelchair and all, even though the floor was smooth and she'd walked just fine in the hallway 5 minutes earlier. Her hair was curled, lipstick perfect. She waved at the room like a pageant queen. No one questioned it. Loretta raised her glass. To family, and to those who step up when it matters. Every head turned to me. I smiled because that's what was expected, the kind of smile you give when your gut is screaming. No one asked how my flight was. No one asked how I'd been. They were too busy writing the part where I played the villain. Halfway through the meal, while I was chewing chicken I didn't taste, Carmela, our neighbor from 3 houses down, leaned in, napkin to her lips like she was about to share a secret. "You must be the selfish one they talk about," she whispered. I didn't flinch. That would have given her too much. I just kept chewing. Later, after the roast and red wine, Delaney gave a speech. A tiny one, scripted, polished. She held her water glass like a fragile truth. "I just want to say," she said, blinking like someone who practiced this in front of a mirror, "that whether or not my sister chooses to help, I forgive her." Applause. Real, actual applause. I clapped too, not because I meant it, but because not clapping would have made it worse. It reminded me of something Loretta used to say whenever I pushed back. Being graceful is knowing when to be silent. That night, I knew exactly what this dinner was. Not a reunion, a performance. And I wasn't the guest of honor. I was the plot twist. Vera didn't say a word. She kept her eyes on her plate, like if she looked up, she'd have to choose sides. After dessert, I started clearing plates. Nobody stopped me. Nobody thanked me. It felt like muscle memory. Move, clean, disappear. In the kitchen, I heard my cousins talking in the hall. They weren't whispering. "She's always been distant," one said. "Delaney always had to carry the family," said the other. I could have walked out and corrected them, but they didn't deserve my truth. Back at the sink, my hands moved on their own. I wasn't washing dishes, I was washing off their words. If they already wrote my script, why was I still acting in their play? When I turned to leave, Loretta stood in the doorway, smile still glued in place. "Maybe you can sleep on it tonight," she said. "Think about doing the right thing." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I was tired. Outside, the night was colder than it should have been. The street was quiet, but not empty. A man stood by the mailbox across the road, holding a beer, his dog sniffing the sidewalk. "You the one not helping your sister?" he called out. I looked at him, didn't answer. "That's rough," he said, shaking his head. I went back inside, closed the door behind me, and walked straight to my room. Sat down, opened my laptop, stared at the screen. Then I typed, "How long does it take for prescription painkillers to destroy kidney function?" I didn't sleep after the dinner. Even after the lights were off and the hallway quieted, my mind wouldn't let go. Words kept spinning. Smiles that weren't smiles, a toast that wasn't for me, and Delaney's soft-spoken forgiveness delivered like a knife through sugar. At some point, my feet took me upstairs. The attic creaked beneath me. Most of the boxes up there were covered in plastic wrap, stacked neatly, untouched. Except one. Mine. No plastic. No label like the others. Just Sharpie on cardboard, written in my mother's handwriting. Keenan's stuff, not needed anymore. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe because I knew if I didn't now, I never would. Maybe because some wounds need light. Inside, a dusty participation trophy from 3rd grade, a spelling bee ribbon, some drawings, faded and bent, and at the bottom, an envelope. I sat right there on the attic floor, tore it open. A printed speech, Delaney's high school graduation. I read each word twice. Her name appeared 6 times, mine, not once. I blinked down at the paper. I wasn't just forgotten, I was deliberately removed. Back in my room, I pulled out my phone. Couldn't sleep, couldn't read, so I opened that box all the way. There was a photo, one of the few framed ones they hadn't thrown out. Delaney's wedding, the whole bridal party lined up, perfectly posed. I remember that day. I remember curling her hair myself. I remember ironing that damn veil, driving 4 hours early so the florist could get in. I flipped the frame over. Bridesmaid number 3. That's all it said. Not Keenan, not sister. Just Number 3. They've always known how to make me disappear without ever asking me to leave. I took a picture of the label and texted it to Thalia, no caption. The next morning, I found Loretta in the kitchen slicing tomatoes for Delaney's sandwich. I held the photo up to her. Was this just a mistake? I asked. She didn't even turn. You were never the center of attention, Keenan. That's not a bad thing. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't smirk. But that line landed with more precision than a slap ever could. I didn't answer. I just went back upstairs, placed the photo on my pillow, and sat down. I thought back to 3 years ago. Dad had a minor heart attack, and suddenly Loretta was talking about responsible estate planning. I remember that meeting. Delaney got both properties. Vera got college funds for her kids. And me? I got the box I opened last night. At the time, I said, I don't need anything. But that was a lie I told myself to avoid feeling what I felt now. They made sure I wouldn't have anything to need. I didn't want revenge. But I wanted understanding. And the more I looked around, the more I saw there wasn't any coming. So I grabbed my jacket and walked outside. Just a slow loop around the neighborhood. Some houses had changed, others hadn't. I wasn't looking for anything, just trying to remember who I used to be when I lived here. I saw Mr. Connell sweeping his front porch, Delaney's ex-boyfriend's dad. He looked up, smiled like it hadn't been years since he last saw me. Funny, he said. I remember you being the one who actually held that wedding together. I smiled back. But inside, something clicked into place. When I got home, I didn't take off my shoes. I sat at the desk in the room I was sleeping in and opened my laptop. Created a folder. Named it. If they ask again, this time I'll be ready. I uploaded the photo of the bridesmaid label. The printed speech with my name, nowhere. Then I opened a new tab. Typed in the search bar. Signs of strategic emotional neglect in families. 3 days after the dinner, I found myself holding a brown paper bag full of soup and protein shakes, following Vera through the wide hallway of Elgin Regional. We were bringing Delaney something comforting, Loretta's words. Nothing about this place comforted me. The lighting was too white, the air too dry, and the faces too polite. I stayed 2 steps behind, hoping I'd blend into the bland tile. When Vera went ahead to check in at the nurse's station, I waited by the vending machine. That's when he walked up. Dr. Teller. Tall, tired eyes, not the type to gossip or smile. He glanced around, then nodded toward the corner of the hallway. I shouldn't say anything, he whispered, sliding a folded note into my palm. But something's off in your sister's chart. Maybe look into this. He walked away before I could ask what he meant. Back in the car, I unfolded it. A name, a date, half a prescription number. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. That came later. I didn't know what he was handing me, but it wasn't just paper. It was permission to stop doubting myself. When the house emptied later that afternoon, Loretta and Delaney off at the pharmacy, Vera running to the store, I went to Delaney's old room. I opened her closet. The smell hit me first. Expensive perfume and hairspray, like she'd never left. Behind an old shoebox, tucked in the back corner, I found a cracked leather purse. Inside, a few wrinkled receipts, 3 expired pill bottles, and a state-issued ID that didn't carry her name. The last name was different. First name similar enough to pass if no one looked too closely. I pulled the slip from Dr. Teller's note and checked the name. It matched. I sat on the edge of the bed, my knees locked, trying to slow my breathing. I took photos, all of it, every label, every date. The receipts painted a trail. Multiple pharmacies, different towns, all paid in cash. Different names, same drugs. I didn't move for a long time. And it could have been old, maybe from before, maybe a phase. Pain management gone sideways. I wanted that to be the truth, but I knew it wasn't. I remembered the car accident 2 years back. She'd spun out in the rain, broke her collarbone. Everyone had said she bounced back fast. What they didn't say was how long she stayed on the pain meds. This wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. Multiple doctors, same prescriptions, different aliases. My family never questioned it, never pushed. Delaney had always been above suspicion. She knew how to cry without tears, knew how to act sick without looking weak. I started to think the kidney failure wasn't bad luck. It was a slow burn she lit herself. That night, I called Thalia. I told her what I found, what Dr. Teller said. I sent over the photos. This isn't just insurance fraud, she said after a pause. This could be felony-level prescription abuse. Her words didn't shake me. What did was hearing my mother's voice again in my head. She's dying, Keenan. Is she? Or is she just out of moves? I sat on my bed, phone in my lap, screen glowing. Everything about this had changed. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. It was legal, maybe even criminal. At dinner, I didn't speak, didn't lift my fork. I watched. Delaney faked fatigue, head leaning back, eyes half-lidded, letting out soft sighs like a soap actress who forgot her line. Vera barely spoke. Loretta kept the tone tight, artificial. Kept the conversation in a box that couldn't hold anything real. No one asked about my day. No one noticed that I hadn't eaten. That silence? It told me everything. They didn't see me, but I saw them. All of them. Later that night, when the dishes were done and the house fell quiet, I opened my laptop, created a new document. Titled it, Timeline, Prescription Pattern, and I wrote, 6 weeks before diagnosis, Delaney filled 2 opioid prescriptions under a false name. The envelope was sitting on my bed when I got back. No knock, no warning. Just there, like a threat dressed as an offer. I didn't even take off my shoes. I stood at the edge of the bed, staring at it. My name was typed neatly on the front, just the first name, like we were still pretending to be close. Inside were the donor consent forms, already filled in. My details, my blood type, my emergency contact. All I had to do was sign. Taped to the top was a sticky note in Loretta's handwriting. Just need your signature. Love, Mom. I sat down slowly. Opened the group chat I'd been ignoring. Messages from Vera, from Loretta, from cousins I hadn't seen in years, suddenly remembering how much family means. They didn't ask. They planned. I flipped to the back page of the form. Loretta had already checked the box confirming verbal consent from donor. She had sent it back to the hospital. I felt it then, that quiet, gut-deep sickness. Not anger, not even betrayal. Just the cold realization that this wasn't desperation anymore. This was manipulation with a legal trail. I walked downstairs, the form in hand, the paper stiff between my fingers. The house was too quiet, too staged. I headed to the kitchen, ready to confront Loretta, but stopped at the sound of Vera sobbing. Delaney was on the floor, curled into herself, one hand on her stomach. Loretta was already on the phone with 911, her voice shaky but loud. "She's crashing," she cried. "She can't wait much longer." I stood there, watched it all like I wasn't real. Then Delaney opened her eyes and locked onto mine, whispered, low enough that no one else heard, "We both know this is on you now." That's when I knew it was a setup. The ambulance came fast, lights flashing, voices rushing. They loaded her onto the gurney, strapped her in, wheeled her out. As they rolled her past the front door, her purse fell open on the table. Out tumbled her emergency medication bag, still sealed. Never touched. I didn't pick it up. Back in my room, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, clicked on the folder I'd been building for weeks, renamed it. It wasn't evidence anymore. Now it was protection. I opened my document, timeline, prescription pattern, and added a new entry. Today, Delaney collapses in kitchen. EMTs called. No medication used. Whispered blame during incident. I pulled out the audio recorder I'd hidden in my coat pocket, just in case. Played it back. Her voice was crystal clear. "We both know this is on you now." I sent it to Thalia along with photos of the consent forms and a note. She forged my approval. I didn't say yes, not once. I don't remember sleeping. I don't remember changing clothes. Just that later that night, Loretta knocked once and came in holding a cup of tea. She didn't sit. She stood, her voice soft. "I know you're scared, Keenan, but you're the only one who can fix this. We're all counting on you." I looked at her. "If Delaney was dying," I said, "she wouldn't be performing for the kitchen cameras." She didn't flinch, didn't speak. She just placed the tea on the dresser and left, didn't even close the door behind her. I looked at my reflection, hair messy, eyes rimmed in red. But I didn't look weak. I looked done. In my notebook, I wrote one line. Family doesn't require sacrifice. It respects choice. Then I walked downstairs, laid the unsigned form on the kitchen table, taped a post-it to it. I will not be coerced. I will not be your solution. Just as I was turning to head back upstairs, my phone buzzed. It was Talia. This is bigger than I thought, the message read. We need to talk, in person. I woke up to a dozen pings on my phone, notifications stacked like bricks, messages from high school classmates I hadn't heard from in years. A coworker sent me a link with a single caption. This can't be real, right? I tapped the video. There was Delaney, soft lighting, draped in a shawl like a survivor of something greater than truth. Her voice trembled just enough, her eyes glassy but not swollen, every word calculated like a church confessional gone viral. I don't blame her, she said. Even if she says no, I still love her. Family is about forgiveness, not conditions. It ended with piano music and a fade-out into a quote about grace. Comments rolled beneath it. She's stronger than I'd be. What kind of sister walks away from this? She's better than me. I wouldn't forgive. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I felt it. The weight of being publicly executed without ever stepping into the arena. She made it war. Quiet. Pretty. Manipulative. I turned on my laptop. My hands didn't hesitate. I uploaded everything. Every screenshot, prescription receipt, audio file, hospital document. I changed the name of the folder from Protection to They Chose the Stage, I'll Bring the Script. Inside the folder, I added a new file. Timeline, emotionally stripped. No adjectives, no interpretation, just dates and data, a prosecutor's draft from a daughter. Then I compressed it and sent it to Thalia. Do not release yet. I want one more day. That pause wasn't cowardice, it was strategy. Later that afternoon, there was a knock on my door. Loretta. She walked in holding the old leather-bound family album, the one with our baby pictures, Dad's blurry fishing photos, birthday cakes from years when we still played pretend. She sat down next to me, opened it slowly, like peeling back a wound to prove it had healed. This was your 5th birthday, she said, tapping a faded photo. You wore that green dress you hated. I didn't respond. She kept flipping. Page after page, years of memories, curated to remind me I mattered. Just not enough to fight for. Families don't keep score, Keenan, she said, still staring at a page. We survive each other. That's what counts. I looked down at a photo of Delaney, standing on stage at her 8th grade graduation. I'd taken that picture. I'd stood at the back of the room, clapping alone. If you cared about unity, I said, you'd have spoken up when they erased me. She didn't argue, just closed the album and left it on the bed. I didn't touch it again. That evening, I walked the halls of the house. In one hand, printed photos. In the other, strips of painter's tape. I placed them quietly, one by one. On the fridge, the bridesmaid photo with the label number 3. In the hallway, the pre-signed donor form. On the mirror in the guest bathroom, a receipt for Delaney's opioid prescription under a false name. No yelling, no confrontation, just truth, framed and placed in every corner they thought was safe. Vera stood at the top of the stairs. She didn't say anything, but she didn't look away either. Delaney slammed her door. Back in my room, I opened my journal, wrote one line. Sometimes your silence makes them louder, and that's how you win. As night crept in, I sat at the dining table alone, tea in one hand, untouched food in front of me. No one joined me. I opened my email. Subject line, urgent, Delaney's record cross-check complete. My fingers hovered over the mouse. This will either burn everything down or prove I wasn't crazy, I whispered. I clicked. The screen went black. My files were gone. The power light on my laptop never turned back on. I sat there for 10 minutes, maybe 15, staring at the black screen. My chest felt hollow, not panicked, but like something had been scooped out of me. The only sound in the room was the distant whir of the ceiling fan and the creak of the hallway floorboards 2 rooms away. I didn't move until the sun had started to stretch across the carpet. When I finally stood, I stepped over the closed laptop like it was a body. My hands were too calm. That's how I knew I wasn't just angry. I was certain. On my desk, beneath a stack of files, something caught my eye. A folded piece of lined paper, torn from a legal pad. My name on the outside, nothing else. Inside, written in my father's unmistakable scrawl, "You were always the one who saw things clearly. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. You were right." That letter didn't fix anything, but it shattered something else. The silence I had mistaken for indifference. I pressed the page to my chest and sat down on the edge of the bed. My breath came slow, but not shaky. I plugged in my phone, opened the backup app. Every file, every screenshot, every audio recording, every photo was safe, saved to the cloud, automatically. They hadn't deleted anything. They'd only thought they had. I texted Talia. "Files safe. Meeting still on." I got dressed. No makeup, no armor, just me. I walked downstairs. No one was in the kitchen. The scent of burnt toast lingered like a memory someone wanted to forget. Delaney was on the couch, feet tucked under her, flipping through a lifestyle magazine. Loretta sat beside her, murmuring something about a fundraiser. They looked up but didn't speak. I left the house without a word. By noon, I was sitting across from Talia in her office. Her eyes were tired, her jaw tight. She laid the folder in front of me like it weighed something more than paper. Multiple doctors, multiple states. "Same prescriptions," she said. "This isn't just bad judgment, Keenan. It's calculated." The analysis showed years of use. Pills obtained under a fake name, overlapping dates, forged IDs. A pattern no one could explain away as medical necessity. Thalia tapped the final page. "Your sister's kidney failure. It's not genetic, not autoimmune. It's prolonged opiate toxicity." I stared at the words but didn't blink. I'd already known. "And the insurance claim," she added, flipping another page, "was submitted under the fake name. That's a felony." I didn't speak. I just took it in. This wasn't just a lie to protect pride. It was a lie to protect a reputation built on manipulation. Driving back to the house, I replayed a memory I had buried years ago. Delaney faking a fever to get out of dish duty, telling Loretta she was dizzy, then winking at me when Mom ran for the thermometer. Back then, I thought it was funny. Now I knew better. She didn't want help. She wanted control, and she learned early on that playing the victim was the fastest way to get it. At home, I opened my journal and wrote, "This wasn't about saving her. It was about saving the image she created for herself." Then another line. "She used our love for her. That's the real illness." I walked into the living room. Loretta and Delaney sat with cups of tea like nothing in the world had ever fallen apart. I dropped the printed report on the coffee table. No dramatics, just paper hitting wood. "I'm giving you until tomorrow to tell the family the truth," I said. "Or I will." Delaney didn't even look at the folder. She smirked. "They won't believe you. They never have." I stared at her. "That used to matter to me," I said, then turned around and walked out of the room. That night, after the lights were off, after the fake calm had returned to the walls of that house, someone knocked gently at my door. It was Vera. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "I believe you," she whispered. "And I found something you'll want to hear." Vera came in quietly, like she always did. She stood in the doorway of my room, holding a flash drive and a red-covered journal. Her eyes didn't meet mine until she sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "I should have said something sooner." She handed me the journal first. I started writing things down a couple years ago. Things that didn't sit right. I flipped through, missed prescriptions. Stories Delaney told that didn't add up. Notes from holidays where she suddenly fell ill just before cleanup. Conversations overheard, coded, careful, curated. Then she pulled out her phone. "There's a recording," she said. She was talking to a guy named Derek, said she'd be back at full capacity after the transplant. She hit play. Delaney's voice filled the room, laughing, light, cruel. If she gives me that kidney, I'll be back to running things in 6 months. She won't ask questions. She's dying to be useful. I didn't flinch. This wasn't about proving I was right anymore. This was about damage control. I nodded once. Thank you, Vera. By the next afternoon, Talia and I had the folder finished. It was thick. Every inconsistency, every fake ID, every pharmacy receipt, the recordings, the medical report, the full audit trail. We printed it all, bound it, and labeled the front. Truth for the family, not for debate. On top, I taped a single note. I am not asking for understanding. I am presenting facts. At 5 o'clock sharp, I stood in the living room with the folder in my hands. Loretta was already there. Delaney next to her, arms crossed, jaw tight. Malcolm leaned against the wall, silent. Vera sat beside the lamp, hands in her lap. I didn't clear my throat, didn't soften my voice. I'm not here for confrontation, I said. I'm just putting this in your hands. I handed each of them a folder. Waited. Delaney flipped through a few pages. Smiled like someone who'd rehearsed the reaction. This is fiction, she said, laughing under her breath. I didn't answer. I pulled out my phone, tapped play. Her voice poured into the room, clear, sharp, deliberate. Keenan's too desperate to belong. She won't ask questions. She'll just give the kidney. No one moved. Malcolm was the first to speak. He stood up, jaw slightly parted. Is that real? Loretta tried to say something. I held up a hand. It's not a debate. Vera broke the silence. I heard her say it. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to be next. I looked at each of them. I won't be used. I won't be erased again. This ends now. Loretta's face collapsed, not from guilt, from panic. This is what you want? She asked, voice shrill. To destroy your sister? This family? Delaney stood so fast, the chair scraped. You've ruined everything, she yelled, storming down the hall. No one followed her. I sat down. Malcolm said quietly, We all failed you. You didn't imagine it. Vera reached over and placed her hand on my shoulder. No hugs, no sweeping apologies, just silence, and not the kind that hides things, the kind that finally lets truth breathe. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Email from the hospital board. Subject: Follow-up. Requested. Potential ethics violation case. I woke up before the sun had touched the windows. The house was still. You know that kind of silence that doesn't just mean quiet. It means no one's pretending anymore. That was the air in that place. Thick with things unsaid. As I passed the hallway toward the kitchen, I caught a sound coming from Delaney's room. Muffled. Low. Almost like prayer. But it wasn't. She always wanted to belong, Delaney murmured, barely audible, tangled in sleep. All I had to do was act sick enough. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The truth doesn't beg to be caught when it wants to be free. I reached into my pocket, hit record on my phone. Not out of revenge, not anymore. It wasn't even about being believed. It was just acknowledgement. She said it. I walked away. Out the front door, the morning air was crisp and honest in a way the house hadn't been in years. Carmela was outside, watering her azaleas in that same floral robe she always wore. She looked up and smiled, like she knew I'd come talk to her before I even opened the gate. I saw her, she said softly, at my place a few weeks ago. Dropped off a box, said it was junk she forgot after the bridal shower. She handed it to me. Inside, a photo of us. Delaney and me. I was pinning her veil, laughing. She was looking at the camera with that same expression she always wore, like she was in charge of the narrative. On the back, in her handwriting, if she knew what I really did, she'd never forgive me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. I watched you all these years, Keenan, Carmela added. You weren't invisible to everyone, honey. That meant more than I expected. A week later, I sat in a small, sterile room at the hospital, across from a panel of board members. Thalia sat beside me, a silent anchor. They reviewed the documents, the audio, the timeline I'd spent weeks building. They asked questions, careful and measured. What outcome are you seeking, Miss Broderick? I looked down at my notes, then back up. Not punishment, I said. Just accountability. And a record. So this doesn't happen to the next person asked to give a piece of themselves without being told the full story. They nodded. Professional. Polite. Distant. That night, an email arrived. Board ruling. Patient removed from transplant eligibility due to ethics breach. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. By morning, my bag was packed. Delaney wasn't there. No goodbye. Loretta never came downstairs. Malcolm handed me a box, gently. This time, it wasn't taped shut. Inside were my childhood things. Books, old pictures, the stuffed bear I thought they'd thrown out. Someone should have stood up, he said. Sooner. I didn't answer. At the front door, I left something on the hallway table. The bridesmaid photo. Underneath it, a note. I've learned to sit at tables that remember my name. Back in Austin, the quiet didn't feel so empty. I unpacked slowly, put on some coffee, sat at my desk, opened a fresh document. My next project wasn't a lawsuit or a memoir. It was a guide, educating organ donors on consent, ethics, and how to ask questions before giving more than they could afford to lose. A week later, I got an email. I almost said yes out of guilt. Then I heard your story. Thank you. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Sometimes justice doesn't sound like thunder. Sometimes it's the sound of your own voice, steady and no longer shaking.